Slide those earphones on if you want them. You don't have to have them. If you'd prefer to go without them, then we can roll without them. It doesn't matter to us.
I do this.
Perfect. All right. More importantly, slide that mic about a fist from your face. Make sure your sound's right. Let our technician over there do his thing. The brains behind the operation.
That's right.
Good deal.
Are you a BC yet?
No, I went part-time, remember?
I know.
Oh.
Yeah, but he was slinging the BC ride.
Yeah, you really were.
He was on the track. He was on the track for it.
I did not like it.
He was on the track for it.
Yep.
That does seem like one of those positions that comes with a lot of, you notice your circle of friends, if you just generically look at firefighters and their friend circle, driver's friend circle, captain friend circle.
Right.
Boy, when you hit that BC spot, that friend circle dries up.
It goes from the size of this table to the size of that glass.
Yeah.
Well, I got to ask, are y'all watching Tacoma?
I watch it. I watched a little bit of it. I haven't seen the recent one.
I've seen some episodes, but I haven't.
It's
I'm not
hilarious.
a.
Well, I mean, it's funny to me, but I think that relationship with their BC is so different than what I've seen in the professional firefighter world. But I did notice in Wilmington there seems to be a little. I think New Hanover seems a little bit more family friendly than some of the others. Is that true?
Sure.
I would buy that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But
a lot of the. A lot of our staff, as far as the relationship goes with the BCs now, is a lot of the BCs were in the same shoes that we're in now.
Right.
So it's not haven't quite got to the age in the fire service yet to where our BCs are so much more experienced than our new folks, because we kind of all came up. We're super young still as a fire service. I mean, we're toddlers. I mean, we're nothing. So. The same people that we served with when we started are now our BCs, so we still kind of keep that great relationship with them for the most part, I would say.
Well, I'm kind of impressed with New Hanover County as a whole, and I'm not sure if Florence didn't do this, but we've got to be professional. We've got to do all. But the one thing I think Florence revealed was we can't do this without each other, and I think the fire service in particular, and I'm not blowing sunshine, is you teach having each other's six. You talk. You don't just talk it. You show it. And I think in particular, the more you see that kind of relationship building, that has to happen in every aspect of New Hanover County government, right? So Florence showed that. It didn't matter who the hell your chief was or who you had to get it done, and you had to be there for each other. And I was really happy to see where the model of professionalism was going. It seemed like we were getting more distant from each other. And after Florence, we were still on the track with professionalism, but we were more attuned to the fact that there's no way we can get this done without each other. And so I think we're getting better to some degree at seeing that. And that is encouraging to me, because honestly, I'm not doing this without that particular piece of it. Because I know humility is about knowing I got something to offer, but I can't do it without you. And that means everybody across the board, just whether it's fire or sheriff or whatever, we got to have each other. So
You said doing this. What is this?
I think service in general.
Okay.
Because to me, public service is all about getting up and being about those that we're serving. And it's got to be both ways. It's not just serving the public. It's also being about that for each other. Because if we're not taking care of each other, how the hell are we going to take care of somebody else? So it's got to be both ways, right?
Sure.
And so service in general, it's got to be that mindset. Everything I do when I wake up in the morning's got to be, what am I focused on today? And it can't be Bodine. It's got to be, what am I doing to drive how we're making the community better, delivering the service, et cetera. And again, not going, since we're here and we're with fire, y'all are fire, we're talking about it. One of the things y'all modeled when I would go on my ride-alongs or when I just sit down and talk or I'd listen to you all, whether it was dailies or keeping up with equipment, whatever it was, that kind of focus on making sure that what's available to you is always ready to be of service is taking care of yourself, sure, but you're also making sure, and I was making that joke about the person stabbing each other and all that kind of stuff, but you're taking care of that person too. Because if we hadn't had those gloves, if we hadn't had the equipment in check, and we were still waiting on EMS, those two people not only could have endangered each other, they could have endangered the people that were trying to respond, and we would have been in a hell of a lot of trouble. So I've watched that over these it's coming on 8 years, I can't believe it. but I've watched that, and I want to see that more and more in tax, in property management, and I see it because I think it resonates throughout all the stuff we do.
What is your position in New Hanover County
So I'm
government?
the senior HR analyst. So I serve with a really great team, and my role. So like Cheryl and Tracy. Cheryl's the manager. Tracy Dawson is the other senior HR analyst. They're dealing more with employee relations. So, y'all get ugly with each other. We got to talk about it, right?
Right.
But if there's just some things that are happening that we're trying to figure out, why are you not getting compensated for what you're doing, or why is there a classification that doesn't make sense? So I think back in the day, from what I understand, as I've learned and researched some history, y'all used to have lieutenants. And so why weren't they captains? Why weren't we making things the way they were? And so part of what Tracy and Cheryl do is take a look at the work that's being done and then look at classifications to make people sure that people are getting recognized for the work they're doing. And then Mark, our chief, sits and looks at all of this. My role is about learning, development, recognition, and customer service. So my role had never been done in the way it's being done now. They had never had a single person sort of focused on that. But what they needed was somebody to come in and take the strategic plan and the shared values and then enliven it across the enterprise. And I'm not going to ever train you on what you do for fire. Sure. I'm not that smart. But what I can do is sit down and talk to you about what do y'all need to talk about for the areas for your growth as professionals. So if it's emotional intelligence, if it's conflict resolution, if it's things that you need to know to empower you to be a good supervisor, to be a direct line employee, best customer service practices, all of that kind of good stuff. We're going to get the best people possible, because I'm not necessarily the subject matter expert in that. Like y'all have an apparatus operator, you've got somebody that's really good at ropes, or you've got somebody that's really good at certain expertise inside of your stuff. I'm going to go get the best experts around, bring them together, and then put them to you and allow them to bring that forward. But here's the deal. They got to be aligned with our values and yours. They've got to be aligned with what we need in terms of output to serve the citizens. And I'll be honest with you, they've also got to make sense in terms of value, because I can't just go hire somebody that says, oh, I'm great. No, it's got to be, you're going to have a return on value. You're not just going to come in, throw a bunch of stuff around and then leave, and then we're not going to be able to have some follow-up, some follow-through, some reporting, and then we're going to be able to check in with you and say, all right, did this actually help you? I know y'all did some mental health training just recently. Y'all got huge impacts on what you do every day. The stuff you see, I will never fully understand. And I remember, and I'm talking a lot, so y'all keep.
No, you're good.
But I remember the former assistant director of of DSS. She was at do y'all know what Good Friends is?
Mm-mm.
And I tell stories, but Good Friends is this luncheon that these ladies started years ago. And they would literally get a brown bag luncheon. These really wealthy ladies would get together and they would raise money to help support DSS, social services, because they knew the government can't do everything, right? And there's certain things the government can't do. Well, these women, and part of them, and you grew up here, I've been coming down my whole life. So and I'm having a mental moment. I'm 55 now, y'all. I know I don't look it, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Not
a day past 30.
Thank you. Yeah. I'll give you some money in a minute. What's the restaurant there at Wrightsville Beach? It's been there forever. Right there at the corner, at the drawbridge.
That'd be you.
Oceanic.
Causeway
Bridge
Cafe?
tender.
Bridge tender.
Yeah.
But Daddy been bringing there since I was this high. So anyway, the bridge tender, the owner of the bridge tender, the most wonderful woman. She had the little shop across the street. She was part of that little first original group. Those 6 original women are now 800 women that get together every year. And they don't have a fancy lunch. They just have brown bag lunch. They make the cookies and they get together and they raise like close to $100,000 at Christmas. And the coolest thing is, the reason I know about this is about 10 years ago, they asked different men if we want to come, and that men are not invited, but we're invited to come and be Santa. And our role is to come in, welcome them, And then once they finish their luncheon, we go around and we take the money. We have big buckets and they put the money in. Best thing you'll ever see. And I get chills thinking about it because these just giving. They don't care about fancy. They don't care about being seen. They just want to give. Well, the assistant director of DSS got in front of them and was telling some stories. And she said, I want y'all to know that when I close my eyes, there are things that I have seen in my career with, children that have been hurt, women that have been abused, etc., that I will never want you to ever see. She said, but when I open my eyes, what I have seen, I do want you to see. And that is all these social workers, all these firefighters, all these detectives and deputies and law enforcement who have come to the aid of all of these people who have helped to create a better way for those victims and for those people that have suffered and all that kind of good stuff. And so I remember that visual. This is the second year I was in my job. And I remember that visual. And I've used that example over and over again to remind people that, there's tragedies that are behind your eyes, but to remember that I can't change those tragedies, but we certainly can remember all the good that's being done. And that's part of learning and development, right? That's part of us bringing back into our bodies when so much trauma has been built up, so much stuff is in there, trying to bring back something in there that helps to reset so that it's not bringing it to the point of brink where you know that it's going to hurt or you know that it's going to take you to a place that's dark, and helping to make sure that that's always part of the discussion, that what you all teach about peer support, what we've helped each other understand is necessary to keep getting through, we don't lose sight of that good when there's so much darkness that you're seeing all the time. And I think part of what I've learned in my 8 years, on top of being an educator, is that this isn't about talking about, business skills. This is about talking about how do you help make sure a professional, which you are, is really equipped to continue to serve with all of that going on and be able to get through, but not just get through, because getting through, people have been doing for a long time, but they've also had heart attacks. They've had cancer, they've had strokes, because they were getting through. We want them to be healthy. So if we're going to do learning and development, if we're going to do things that help people successfully create good, we got to make sure we're teaching skills, we're doing things and listening to what people are going through, and then working on how to make that happen. And for me, that's been the biggest part of this job. It wasn't what I told you or what I read in a book. It was what I heard in the room when someone said, whoa, this is what's happened to me. And then seeing how much that helps not only create for that group or your group, but how much it's connected to the other folks. Because while your mud is deep, that mud is on the feet or on the experience of everybody around you. It just may be experienced in different ways. Does that make sense?
It does. I have a couple of questions for you. I'm going to start with an observation. In our line of work, we're passionate about our jobs, and we do extra training on the side, and then, of course, we do the training provided by us through the county and through the department. Some of that training is pride and ownership of your position. Do you see it? Like, instead of being an employee and you have these guidelines that you're running in, the guy's owning it. Like, he's...
For sure.
It's obvious to anybody listening to me sitting here, your job is not a position that you acquired and now you go to work and do that and then you go home and do something different.
No, sir.
I'm proud of that.
Thank you, sir.
How do you get there? I feel it, but it's different. It's admirable. So is that you? Is that just Bodine, or is it the environment that you guys are running HR in? It seems different than anything else I've been exposed to. How did you get to this? Like, why do you care so much, and why are you so passionate about it? It seems like you own it.
So we were talking before all this, and I think, I went through some rough patches when I was younger, and part of it was I know now, sort of, some my own body and things like. But part of it was, my experiences growing up and things like that. So I have a lot of appreciation. I mean, I have a lot of gratitude. I have to give a lot of credit to my mom and daddy. I mean, so I grew up, and I tell this at every orientation when we're introducing ourselves. I was born in a little town called Fuquay Varina, but I was reared in Chapel Hill. So the joke in my family always is I'm the most liberal redneck you'll ever meet, right? Right.
I like it.
But the cool part about that, right, is that on the weekends, I am with my daddy or with my grandparents in Fuquay, and then during the summer, my parents divorced when I was 4. And this is in 19. I was born in '66. So there had never been a divorce that we know of in my family, and we're talking 400 years of traceable history. I mean, we got the best cousins that have been marrying for generations in my family. So they didn't know what to do with us,
right.
And so we were spoiled. Part of some of the problems I had was I was spoiled rotten. If I couldn't get it from mama, I could call daddy because they didn't talk, right?
Right.
So I didn't really have a lot of boundaries growing up, didn't have a lot of discipline. That's something I've acquired in my later years. But regardless, I was so blessed. I had so much going on. I didn't know that as a kid. But I did have the experience of on the weekends, I'm in the more rural area. With daddy during the summer, we'd come down to Chadbourne, Whiteville. He was on the tobacco market. So I was in the warehouses. I'd ride the golf carts around the warehouses, and then we'd come to Wilmington, we'd come to Wrightsville Beach, and, all that kind of good stuff, right? But during the week, here I'm in Chapel Hill, and my mom was amazing because she would let me, I'm like 7, 8 years old, literally walking around the campus of UNC Chapel Hill. It was my playground. So I can remember going into like the planetarium and 8 years old, just walking around the building. In those days with kids, nobody helicoptered. So it was a whole different experience. So I think for me growing up, I had these experiences, and I watched my mom and I watched the people that I was growing up. They really cared about the world around them in different ways, very different ways. Daddy's side, much more conservative. Mother's side, even though they were from Fuquay, very much more in a more liberal way. I'm much more moderate than people give me credit for. I mean, I've been pigeonholed in this community a couple times thinking I was very liberal, and I'm actually very moderate. But that experience was all about service. It had nothing to do with the political genre. It was more about watching people who cared about the people around them. So I grew up with that. But then it came to when I got into school and I decided to go back into school, I started to see what I wanted out of life. And that came from having actually moved up north. And I worked, I know this is going to be a weird story, but I had gone through a really rough patch. A friend of mine called me and said, you're going to die. You're just not going to do well. She said, I'm working at a school called in Lakeville, Connecticut. And she said, if you want to come up here and hang out with me for a while, come on. So I went up to Lakeville, Connecticut, fanciest place I've ever lived in my entire life. And I lived up there for 3 years, and my life completely changed. I became the manager of the dining room of the Simmons Way Village Inn in Millerton, New York. And up there, they have these massive estates, and they have caretakers that live there. So that the city people, when they are in the city, they let these people live in their homes. And you take care of the house. So I managed an estate. I'm 22 years old.
Right.
And I'm managing this 8,000 square foot house in Sharon Valley. It was just trippy, right? But I learned something in that. Like my whole life, I was like, why am I not this? Why am I not that? And what I watched from that, and I was taking care of the apartments in the city and all this stuff, I was watching all this, and it was like, and I was going through this big change, and I was like, there's something that this is not what I want. Mm-hmm. And I started to really get ground in the sense of I want to go back to school and figure out a way to do something that actually creates change, that actually does something that actually serves other people. Because what I was seeing, and no discredit to them at all, this is not judgment. This was making personal choices, was, $1,000 dinner plates and these big expensive trips and all this kind of good stuff. And it was like, none of that felt real to me. Mm-hmm. What did was the mountains. So when you're talking about your way you live,
absolutely,
the nighttime.
Yeah.
the being with somebody, the creating. And then I started learning about what was going on in the city. This was 1989 to 1992. And I was starting to see what was happening. I would go to the apartment at Tudor City, and I'd look directly, and the front of the apartment would look out onto the Chrysler building, which was unbelievable. I mean, this country kid looking out, and then the back of the house would look at the UN. You look directly down, and it was a line of homelessness. I mean, it just would give me chills. And it was like my first time. I was waking up from all this self-centeredness that I had gone through for myself. This was like me waking up going, this is not the way I want to live. But what's the solution? And so for a while, I'll be honest, I got involved in politics. I thought, oh, well, the parties are going to fix this. Parties are not going to fix this. No, ma'am. No, sir. And a part of that had to do with coming up through the party. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my daddy was really big in the party in North Carolina, and I would hold the sign up, and he would nail it into the poles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, back in the days when we would do that. And my aunt was into all sorts of stuff. Anyway, so I grew up through the party system, and then I realized this is not real. This is not where it's at. And I'm not, again, nothing against elected. Electeds are great, but that was not the track I was on. And I started looking more. So I went into nonprofits. And so I started volunteering. And the more I got involved with nonprofits, that's where I started to see this idea. This is a long story short. I'm sorry. But the progression going through school and getting involved in nonprofits was where I started to figure out this is where, if I leave anything on this earth, it's that I want to make a connection with something that creates good, right? Public service, I know, is not perfect. It's not the end-all to end-all. But I did start seeing through my experiences in the nonprofit world that if you really connected with public service in a way that there was good people doing stuff, it was amazing. And I will tell this story. So the reason I got to New Hanover County, I left UNCW. I'd been working at UNCW for 13 years. I was a program manager for the Honors College. One of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. My boss let me, thrive and live outside of my scope. And these kids were amazing. I watched them grow. And during that time, I was involved in Coastal Horizons, involved in WAT, involved in all these different organizations. Part of that was when I was involved in those things, I could bring it back to the kids, get them involved, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I was a commissioner on the Housing Authority, chair of Parks and Rec for the city. I mean, it was just so powerful to be involved in stuff. Well, I knew that I couldn't grow at UNCW without an advanced degree. And I kind of reached my summit there. And someone offered me a position to leave UNCW, really good salary, and I did. And it wasn't the right job. But another friend of mine, while I was on Parks and Rec, had started this idea of the miracle field. And he came to me and he asked me, he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Well, it's been a great experience." He said, "Oh, something's wrong."
That's bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And my dad had just died. And fortunately for me, he had helped me. He'd left me something a little bit. And he said, "Well, look," he said, "we have just gotten enough money. Pete Hexter, Mr. Roundtree, Gary Shipman, all these people had raised all this money. Holly Grange. I mean, you just talk about these people had come together, raised all this money, $1.6 million. But they had not broken ground on the field yet." And he said, "We got to hire an executive director." He said, "You got to interview, but you want to interview." He said, "Because what do you want?" I said, "I want a purpose." He said, "All right." He said, "But we can't pay you." He said, "We can pay you a little, but we're not going to pay you what you might need." And he offered me the salary, and I was like, "Oh, Jesus." Went home. We had a talk. We've been married 25 years. We went home, had a talk, had a little bit of cushion. We could get through the next 2 years with that as our cushion. Made a decision, best decision I've ever made in my life. And there was a couple of reasons. One was because I'd never project managed a build before. So this is a new relationship. Alan Gregory, want something built? Call Alan Gregory. I don't mean to be a commercial.
Right.
Man was on my tail every 5 seconds telling me how to do it right. I mean, I still got his voice in the back of my head yelling at me because he was put the bricks down right, get it level. I mean, I love the man. And his daddy, we dedicated the flag to his World War II daddy. Rocky Campana. I mean, just huge. Just met so many good people that wanted to give, right? And then these kids, these adults, all these people with disabilities, that we're building this field to have access to things that a lot of us take for granted, right?
Sure.
And it was amazing. But here's with public service. We're building this thing as a private-public partnership. So that meant it had never been done before, ever. Now, we're 2029, we'll be 300 years old as a county. It's never been done before. So there's a lot of hiccups. I'd go to New Hanover County. Jennifer Stansel had just started her job as risk management. And I'd say, we got to have this done, this done. I had a berm that they had mistakenly built that had like literally 80 truckloads of dirt that had to be moved. Went to Tara Duckworth. We'll get this done. We'll take that dirt. We'll put it somewhere else. Went to Jennifer Stansel, and I didn't know Jennifer from Adam, and I said, we got to insure this thing. And she said, what are you doing? And I said, well, we're creating sports and recreation for people with severe disabilities. And she's like, and I'm risk management. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, what's the outcome? What are you trying to achieve? And I told her, we got this. Building inspectors would come out, something would be wrong. They'd get it, we'd help get it fixed. I was so blown away. Not perfect, but blown away. And the more I got involved with New Hanover County, the more I realized, now I misjudged something with the county. And then you all showed up. I had a fire chief that came out, and he stopped his car one day and he said, what the hell are y'all doing out here? And I told him. He went back to the PFFA and he raised enough money to buy our first accessible picnic tables for the out there, where nobody else was going to do something like that. Your PFFA did that. New Hanover County did that. And so I kept having these relationships. So after I was got the field up and running, it was, now I need a recreational therapist to run it. Now I got to do something and go to the next step. And that's how I ended up with the county. But everything that drove that was, what's going to create a difference? How do you make that next step into being a part of something that creates good in the world, right? And that's all it was. It's that drive. And for me, I guess I got somewhere along the line of realization, and I don't know whether it was watching my grandparents leave us stuff and then realize none of it's going to, you don't get buried with it. All
Right.
that china, all that silver, all that mass, none of, even land. You know, none of it goes somewhere. And I got there's a family right now that I know of in the county that's fighting over, $8 million worth of land, and they're in court over it. And it's like, why? Why are y'all?
You can't take it with you.
No,
Yep.
None of this goes with us. But good keeps going. Good is and every time I read history, that's what's kept things moving forward, or the opposite. Good is what's done it. So I'm not BSing people. I'm not blowing sunshine at people when I'm in front of classes. And I say, if y'all don't show up, this is going to go sideways fast. So whether you believe it or not, just the fact that you showed up today and you clocked in and you came to work, that made a difference. The more you put into it, though, and still taking care of yourself, that's really powerful, because we need it. And the more we've gone through this, I mean, we're languishing right now. We've gone from Florence right into COVID. I mean, this mess has gotten, and along the way, we had that freaking opioid epidemic along the way. So y'all popping,
Right.
Narcan inside of people. And then the minute you get through with that, you got to go back to that same person because that person's addicted. And how do you keep making sure in your mind you're like not judging? And I'm going to. So that's a lot to contend with. So that goes back to, I'm going to show up for y'all. I'm going to show up, and y'all, hopefully you'll show up for each other, because you know that if you don't, what's going to happen, right? That's powerful. So if there's a why in that, I think that's why.
What you got? What you thinking?
All kinds of things,
Yeah.
honestly. Talking fire service specifically, when you do your classes and when you do your presentations, obviously with your fantastic intentions in mind, how is that received throughout fire services?
It depends.
Okay.
It has to be informed by what you all kind of want. And so it can't just be me going to Chief Pinson and saying, what do you think that everybody needs? I got to be able to access not only chiefs and captains, I got to be able to access more folks that are actually in the houses and actually ask what you want.
Street level.
Street level, right. And I haven't been able to do that as much over the last 15 months because of COVID. But typically, I've gotten some really good feedback. If something doesn't go well, y'all going to let me know. Y'all are not quiet people.
That's true.
But what I have felt honored by is that you've trusted me enough to be able to let me know that. I think there have been people, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, that have gotten in front of you that you've been like, oh, hell no.
Trust is a big, big deal in this industry.
I would say probably every person
Yeah.
that gets in front of us, that's the first
Right.
reaction.
Yeah. If you can establish that, if we perceive that we can trust where you're coming from, the message we might disagree with, but we're going to open up the ears if there's a trust. Like, well, let's give them a chance. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. But if there's no trust established first, you're just beating a drum and,
Yeah,
and
right.
the ears are closed, and that's not a good thing. I'm not saying that's a good thing at all. I'm just celebrating the trust part. I'm glad that you acknowledge that. It's
Absolutely.
yeah.
As Steve has said it, and it's the truth. But in the fire service, and I'm probably can cross over here into the sheriff's office and any kind of probably EMS public service stuff. But trust and performance is the currency, 100%. So
Absolutely.
that's and it's hard. I can't fathom being somebody not in my industry trying to come into my industry and teach what you teach, the things you're presenting to us and stuff like that. I can't imagine it. It's good on you. But I can't honestly think of a better person. I'd love to see you a lot more than we get the opportunity to.
Thank you.
I think your energy and your openness and your truthfulness about things, you already got more buy-in than a lot of folks. And I'd love to see you present more things than you do.
Thank you.
As far as
I appreciate that.
as far as our industry goes.
Yep.
Yeah, it matches up the being into the job like we perceive it, not just us too, but the department. When somebody comes up and you just automatically can tell that this person's bringing something because they feel passionate about it. The sell is different than if it's this we gotta go over this today.
Yep.
This document or whatever it is. I'm still nerding over the ability to own the position from a department standpoint. Like New Hanover County gave you this assignment, and then you took it, and it's mine, and I get to go. They teach us that. There's books about pride and ownership and stuff. Maybe I just have misunderstood the ability to own. I felt like I've owned my position pretty well, but I think I'm leaving something on the table because I'm not doing it like you're doing it.
Well, but everybody does it for their own. I mean, you rise to the occasion based on who and what you bring to it and what you value. And I think that's each are our personality. And I will say this. My mother said to me, I'll never forget it. When I was 10 years old, she looked at me and she said, Bo, as long as you have that mouth, you will never starve. I mean, and I remember it.
Yeah.
And she said it to me several times since then. And she was not being nice, But I think, we all have our own gifts. And I do know that this being able to communicate is part of mine. But what I had to learn as I've gotten older is that this has to match this and this. And that wasn't always the case. I used to use this to get out of trouble, to get by somebody, to get what I wanted, all that kind of good stuff. In this line of work, in what I have seen, especially I got to give credit to my chief too. My chief was like, I don't know this, so go do. So one of the things that I got to do was go out and have experiences, right? And I know boots and badge, but I went to Captain Wilson, Chuck Wilson, over in the sheriff's department, and he said, that if you walk in looking like that, and that was a suit and tie, he said, it's not going to work. He said, because number one, when a civilian or whatever walks in, it's on your feet, and everybody has to stand up. he said, so here's what we're going to do. He said, I'm putting you in uniform, and you're going to go through the same boot camp that all the new recruits go through. And I looked at him like he had lost his damn mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because first of all, in a uniform, but now I will have to tell you a really cool story. My dad anyway, long story, but he always in his heart, no matter how well he did, he wanted to be a highway patrolman. That was a big dream of his. So I'm a junior. I'm Linwood Sherrill Dean Jr. is my real name, my Christian name. I was nicknamed Bo at birth. So I had a uniform with my daddy's name on it.
Oh,
Nice.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And I still do. It's still in the closet. But anyway, so he got a uniform whenever Dolls got me fitted up, and I went through their academy. We had drill every morning at the flagpole with Master Sergeant Beagle. We went through the gun range. We went and did CSI. We went through the whole 9 yards. One of the best experiences I could have ever had, because I never would have gotten to know the job the way that you experience it had I not been in uniform with them. And most of the recruits didn't really understand who I was other than just one of them. And that was amazing. And that's kind of why I want to do more ride-alongs with y'all. I want to do more of those experiences. But I've done it in health. I've done it in inspections. I've done those experiences. And I think part of this becoming authentic is actually being with people and seeing the work, and it can't be inauthentic. And I think that becomes part of my understanding when I see even inspectors from building safety, because they're very much the same. If they get somebody that's in front of them that's giving a bunch of BS, gone. Their lights go out and they're done, because they work hard and they're very skilled at what they do. So if somebody's coming in there with a bunch of crap, it's a waste of time for them. So it's not about trying to pretend like you know someone's job. I'll never walk your shoes, but at least somebody took your time to have some respect for what you do and took some time to figure it out and come out from behind a desk and figure. Does that make sense?
It does make
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah.
And I think that's one thing I'm trying to implement with, even fire service. When we do these supervisor trainings and things like that, y'all, you got to get out. And I don't care if you know how to do someone's job. That's not what I'm asking you to do. But get out and get to know your people and at least be there and let them see you. That's a big part too. Mm-hmm. It's like the guys out at environmental management, they would tell me all the time, y'all don't know us. Nobody comes out here. And I have never in my life gotten an email like the one I did when the entire executive staff went out to the landfill. And they were just blown away. They were like, this is the coolest thing ever. And it made such a difference. And it wasn't because people didn't care. It's just that intentionality needed to take place. And we just had the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners had their conference here. And you could not have enough spaces for people who wanted to go see our landfill because it's so impressive what we're doing in New Hanover County, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that really blew them away too, and the recognition they're getting. But that everybody deserves that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
It does.
Yeah.
How far up the organizational ladder does the what did you describe it? Where the managers or the people in your position go and ride along with us. You said a phrase a second ago that kind of described it a little bit better than I can, I'm sure. How far up the chain does that go?
Well, I think so. Cheryl and I both have been. I've done them more mainly because of my position, but I know Cheryl has been on ride-alongs. She's a manager, and that's we both report to our chief.
Okay.
Chiefs report directly to the county manager. I know the county manager has been in most houses. I don't know about ride-alongs or not. Sure. I don't know about how that works. And I know different people along the department levels have been out in different experiences over the course of their careers.
Do you believe that it will be beneficial for them to get out and do that kind of stuff?
I think it's great for the departments all to talk about making invitations to come on out and just visit. I think that's really powerful because sometimes I don't think necessarily, even other department heads, like if I'm in finance, I may not really think about, or I may not know that I can, are welcome or whatever. So it's nice to be invited, like, come on out, come see us. Yeah. I think that's always a really good thing. And I think we're having more and more discussions about that. Now, I don't know if you know this, we have the executive leadership team, the strategic management council, And those two leadership teams, the executive leadership team has been doing this thing where they've been shifting their meetings around. Now, they haven't been able to do as much during COVID, but they were doing it before that. So they were meeting at the Senior Resource Center, or they were meeting at Environmental Management, or they were meeting different places. I think once COVID dies down a little bit more, they'll start doing that again. But your executive leadership team is the 3 assistant county managers and the county manager, the attorney, the clerk, and then all of the chiefs. And the chiefs are anybody that has direct purview over all 1,900 plus employees. So that's finance, human resources, strategy. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Then the Strategic Management Council is all of those people, and then all of the department heads. So that would be your chief. That would be, Joe Suleiman from Environmental Management, all the others. So that's like 40 people total. They meet quarterly. And then the executive leadership team meets literally every week, because they need to have eyes on whatever's happening in the agency, and they post what they do on shorelines. And I know that gets a little confusing because y'all have fire lines, and that's one thing that I'm hoping we've got some people going in communications right now trying to figure out how to make sure we're cross-posting a lot of times.
Those invitations, do they come from our level, or do they need to come from above?
I get in trouble, but I will say this.
I like trouble.
I'm good. I'm good trouble. But I think that anybody in the agency should be able to speak up and say to their managers, "Hey, let's do this. Let's see about doing it," and then get that going along. But one of the things that is absolutely said in our agency from the county managers is, if you've got an idea, come, speak up, say something to us. And that's the whole idea behind teams. You'll see a post from Chris, and he's got these town halls now, and he'll open up questions. Why not ask him, hey, you want to come out and see us, or, you want to come out and do something? I think there's a lot of opportunity there to have conversations. I know in your department, and we talk about department culture, there is kind of a hierarchical, we want to go through chain of command. We all talk about going through chain of command. Again, though, I think there's a relationship that we have with each other where something like that, talk about it. So,
yeah, I'm gonna go perfect world on you. I know you like that question. That
Magic wand.
That conversation you had when you were doing the what's the field you were part of? Miracle Field. Yep.
Access of
So when you spoke to the risk, the person in charge of risk, and she asked the questions like, well, what's your goal? So she clearly had ownership of her position. I hate to keep beating that drum. I'm not going to stay on it. But she clearly was in charge of her situation, and you brought what you were in charge of at the time. And you indicated a second ago that your mouth, you use it to get out of trouble. And then when you made the link and started letting your voice be a combination of basically your heart and soul and your thoughts, and it's like you got pure. So when you went
check my motives, yes.
Look at this guy. Yeah, I love motives. When you went to her with your need, she surely perceived like this is I've got his goals. I can see his motives because he's not asking. You weren't asking for a Denali to ride back and forth. You were asking for a legitimate thing, and she can perceive the connection that you've made in your communication. In the perfect world, New Hanover County, or this is not just a New Hanover County podcast, like anybody's system that they're working in, if you can get the departments talking to each other and have the pureness in the communication. Like if you're just trying to, go to finance and get whatever, like if you're trying to do something that's inappropriate, it's going to be perceived. Mm-hmm. But if you're not, if you're trying to just get something done that's a pure thing, it's easier. It's easier if you're just like, this is my goal and this is what I'm trying to get to. I don't have to make up fancy terms. I can just go set the right meeting and then start talking about it. Put the problem on the table. And in our organization, it would be so nice. You've given us some training in this, and we have interdepartment training, but that ownership thing, if I'll use this example, in our evals, integrity is either yes or no.
Right.
You know, it used to be like a range. We trust. Like when we hire people and bring them in, we're extending an amount of trust. And that's a pretty generous method. Wouldn't it be perfect if we could extend that trust, that connection is made until further notice? You know, like if you abuse it, all right, we're going to have to take that from you.
Right.
But it feels like I've been around for a decade, a little bit more. And from the beginning to looking at now, like your position, it is a perfect world scenario, but it's a lot closer now than it used to be.
Yep.
I'm big on that communication that comes from a spot of pure motives.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Part of that too is the alignment, because now we've got a clearer means to align some of those conversations. It's motive, it's that what is my intention, and you can see that. But then we've also been able to figure out as a county to operate with a means to say, all right, if we're going to ask for something, if we're going to talk about things that we really want to desire, does it align then with the strategic map or the strategic plans? And even in the department level, y'all, if I'm not mistaken, over the last couple of years, there's been some real intentionality to say, what is it that we're trying to do better? How are we trying to achieve things better? And so it's not just, I want to go out and get a brand new engine, because I think we need to have 4 at this station rather.
Right.
It's does this match up with what we're actually trying to achieve? Because
Certainly.
we've got more heart attacks happening here than fires, or whatever. So I think all that's coming together. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that's helping us to be able to connect even further. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
That drives it more, and that's really powerful. That helps too with training, because then when things get to a point where people are feeling like they don't have a place, it's like, whoa, here you are. You know, this is we're talking about organizational capacity where people have to be agile. What does that mean for you, and how do we fix that? Or we're talking about things where we're looking at data driven, and yes, the data, and y'all were ones that proved this one, because the data said you didn't need to send out a truck, and I think it was a truck and an engine every time an alarm went off.
Right.
But then y'all found out that if you don't send a truck and an engine and you get there and there's a fire, there's a delay, and not only is that going to hurt your time, but that could hurt our insurance rate. And so, all of a sudden, data's right. Absolutely.
Right.
Let's go with data, but let's also talk about what we need as a county to talk about what we need as our insurance rate, our response time, saving lives, et cetera. So you were able to step up, right?
Yeah,
and
risk management.
And risk management. So, but here we got the alignment. You got your intention. You got your heart. You got your experience. Beautifully done. And I loved that. I thought that was a really great example of how really making sure that all voices were heard and using that data to drive it was a really great thing.
Yeah. I'll use that occurrence as an example. I'm not saying it was a mistake. It was a data-driven decision. But in an example similar, if you make a mistake, if you just make it and then never acknowledge it and never address it, then it's just this thing that's a sting on you. If you make a mistake, acknowledge the mistake.
It's accountability.
Yeah, and then fix it and move on.
Yep.
Yeah, there's like that. I'm not saying that was a mistake, but it's a good example of something, a decision that was made, and then later, like, you know what, maybe that wasn't the right call.
Right.
And then fix it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I only make 20 mistakes a day, so I know.
Yeah. I'd
That's
say
pretty
right
good.
past that
I
number.
know, right?
Yeah, I'm done with that by 8 o'clock. I'm a 4:30 a.m. kind of guy, and by 8, I'm way past 20. Yeah. Absolutely.
My old
Sure.
boss taught me, my bad, and I'm like, I got it. So that's I'm good with that. Really good.
What's one of the most positive things that you've been a part of implementing into New Hanover County? As far as, I guess you can go with strategic planning is not really your thing. I get that, but kind of what's something that you've really championed, like a training program, that you've really got behind that you're just super proud of, or something along those lines? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the resilience program has been probably the biggest. So we went through Florence, and resilience had been on the catalog. You could choose to go to the class, and also, I think the disconnect for resilience was we were teaching resilience about how to get through, and again, you can get through, and your heart rate can be up, your body can be tense, that kind of thing. And one of the things we were having is people would talk about the fact that they get home, they take 4 or 5 hours to wind down because what they were experiencing was still living in their bodies, right? The kids would be on their last nerve, whatever. And that's not a healthy place to be. And if you're working 24 hours and then you're spending another 8 hours before you can wind down, that's a lot of time lost, right? So that beautiful thing that happened after Florence was when the Resilience Task Force of New Hanover County came in and brought the community resilience model to give us training. And I'm sitting in there with Susan Henley, Amy Reed, and Robin Johnson. Amy was at the library. Susan Henley's with health. She's a clinical psychologist, clinical therapist. And then Robin Johnson's a child protective services social worker. And there's a ton of other people in the room. And they're starting to talk about this biological model. And I'm thinking about y'all because it's not mental weakness. It's not sitting here going, sunshines and rainbows, unicorns, and coming out your butt, whatever. It's talking about the fact that this stuff's living in your body. What can you do and, to help to reset and to help you to move from sensations that are distressing to something that is positive or neutral? And these simple skills and those kinds of things. And I'm going through stuff at the time. I'd gone through some things with my own heart. And so I'm, in there thinking, this is for me too. And anyway, so we went through the training and I went back to the agency and I started making phone calls and I said, this is it. What do y'all think? And I called Donnie, the chief. I called all sorts of different people and they were like, go for it. See what we can do. So we developed that 90-minute. But what I loved about doing the mandatory was the response that I got from every walk of the agency. First of all, there were emotional responses in the actual training itself. So that took a lot of energy from us when we were presenting, but it was powerful to see the response in the written responses. And then Buddy Martinette, Chief Martinette, your chief, got together and said, we want every member of command to go through the deeper training. So we did that. Unfortunately, COVID's broken out, so we have not done the captains yet, but we're going to get that done. But we did do every single master firefighter in Wilmington. And then we did some others as well. And from the response, we did really well with it. But in our agency, we formed that resilience working group that meets every month. And so we formed a peer support group, and that's when Chief, he's going to kill me if he sees this podcast, and I just skipped out on him. His brother is also
Chief Stoffel.
Chief Stoffel?
No, a Wilmington Fire Chief,
okay.
And his brother.
Robinson.
Robinson, thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Please forgive me, Tom Robinson. Please forgive me, Tom Robinson.
He does, I promise.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
I bought your book on eBay, I promise. Anyway. He's amazing.
Little plug. I like
So
it.
yeah, so he brought peer support, and not only peer support for fire, but he brought it for HHS. Taught it for free. Did it on his own time. I mean, just amazing. He's a part of our resilience task force as a liaison from Wilmington, right? So we're meeting monthly, and then we do an employee survey. And the employee survey, we got 6 questions in the employee survey about resilience. The data was off the charts. People, number one, knew what the skills were. They knew how to make the resilience change. And I'm not saying this is a perfect world. I'm not saying y'all or anybody's practicing it perfectly. But we've made a change, right? And for me, it's not just me, it's us. But to me, that was one of the best things because this is giving people some things that'll help themselves. And from somebody that uses food and other things, in my past, that are not the healthiest options, to me, this is the gift. Because I know when I get home and I've still wrapped up in stuff, that chicken pastry or those things they're going to kill me, right? And I also know that we have people that are with us that when they get home, it's not one drink. it's a bottle. It's not one pill, it's a bottle. Or it's not one throwing of a chair. There's some other things that go along with that. And it's not one department. It's across the enterprise, because stress that lives in our bodies, trauma builds up. And this is not judgment. This is not mental weakness. This is just the way it is. So how we help people to be able to reset in their own bodies can literally have huge outcomes on how they'll be able to adjust and be able to work through. But hell, just to have some peace, to be able to get off shift and go home and to be able to make that shift to that field or to that antique truck that I still want that you sold and I didn't get a chance to bid on. But, to be able to make that shift, right, without having to lose time that is yours. And as much as I love public service, one thing I know is that when I leave work on the day that I die, they're going to list my position. So I love what I do, and I want to create good as long as I can. But I cannot, and I don't want any of y'all or anybody I work with to lose that time that they have outside of work either. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It
So
does.
that's why I'm proud of that. That's why I'm proud of us. I'm proud of our agency, because I'll tell you, and I'll say it on this podcast, our county manager he's amazing, but he is not touchy-feely, right? So when I was coming up with this, it was like, And then when we went, I always do all mandatory trainings I do with leadership, with chief, all of them. And so I do it first with them, because if they don't back my play, it's not going to work.
Right.
And when we got through with that training, I mean, the room was like blown away. And then Chris himself was like, got it. And he loved it. And I get chills. I mean, it's so cool to see how, again, Florence taught us about having each other and that kind of thing. And now it's permeating other things. I hope y'all are seeing them in the houses. I hope those skills and stuff are they there?
Yeah, I see one every time I walk into the
Are y'all
bathroom.
using them,
Yeah.
I hope?
No, it's not made it down to our level yet, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's just not.
Okay.
I guess COVID and all that kind of stuff. I'm just a driver, so I'm far from anything special. But it just hasn't made
Just
it.
a driver.
Just a driver.
Back
Yep.
that up for a minute.
Yeah, right.
So when nobody stops when you're trying to get to a scene, and nobody takes care of you when you're trying to get everybody on the scene, you are just a driver.
Exactly.
When
Just a driver.
everybody's flipping you off, when you're driving through on an engine or a truck and doesn't take care of you, you're just a driver.
I'm just a driver.
So let's pull you back for a minute and let's give you some honor.
I appreciate it, but I'm not big on accolades by any means. I appreciate you though, for sure. No, that stuff, it just hasn't. I don't know that it's just not made it down to the operations level for us yet.
You should have seen me riding backwards. I was the first time I ever got into a truck. I was back there and I was watching people not stop, not pull aside, and I'm just cussing. And I don't remember who it was who was driving. He was like, "Bo, you need to calm down." And I'm like, "What? Oh."
That's awesome.
Do you think the
So we will get that fixed. I mean, that's got to happen. We got to spend more time coming. And if it's this way, then what I can do is like a shift. I can come do an hour thing over there, and we can talk about it. And it doesn't even have to be me. I can bring Cliff Barnett. I can bring Christy Ailey, like that. So I can bring other people that can come over and spend an hour or so.
Do you believe the message? Do you believe the message of the content and the content delivery traverses all the planes of our enterprise, or do you think it needs to be tailored a little more to each one? This is just your opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, by all means.
I think so. I'm now sort of a national conversation with CREM, and we have. So
Okay.
I think the substance is still there.
Sure.
But I think you've got to make sure you relate to it the way it works for you. I think for first responders in general, there are experiences you have none of us are ever going to know. So yes, you're going to have to take it to that level, and you're going to have to think about it. And I do think having a Tom Robinson or having people that are trained. In fact, I'm looking right now, Peterson over in the sheriff's office and Wright are looking. There's 2 sheriff's officers who want to get trained in crim, and I'd love to get another firefighter because there's the person over in WFD is leaving. So I think it would be great to have somebody that is actually peer-to-peer rather than having somebody that doesn't walk it every day.
You're such a pilgrim.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that.
Absolutely.
Especially in our world, peer to peer is it's big for us.
I think Blake would be, and he's probably going to start sending voodoo dolls my way for this, but I really do think Captain Turner is to me somebody that would really do well with this, and I think he hasn't heard me say this before, and probably will hear it now, and probably
Guarantee you'll hear it now.
Yeah.
if my tires have been slashed, you'll know why.
Right.
But he would be really good at this.
Completely agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, completely agree.
It's only a week, Blake. It's only a week.
I'll
Yeah.
poke at him in the morning for you.
It's online. Everything's online now, so it doesn't, But
He
I
has-
from the minute I met him, the way he's able to connect with people and McDonald's great, but I just this is something that Blake has, which is a gift and they're both very gifted, but Blake has a connection that I think would be really good with this material. So,
Couldn't agree more.
Yep.
You got
I
something on
was
your
just
brain?
gonna say, Captain Turner has that trust, like
Fact.
yeah, his time on the street. Yeah, I think he would be a good fit for that.
Yep. So we've recruited tonight. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Like I
Nomination.
said, I'll see him in the morning. I'll make sure I poke fun at him for sure. So I asked you what you're most proud of by far. What's been the most difficult? Every rainbow has an end.
Yeah, it does.
That's
It
right.
does.
So what's been the most difficult? Or challenging, maybe not difficult, but challenging.
So you know the serenity prayer, right? So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Accepting the things I cannot change. Seeing there are things in our political reality that are just difficult, and then standing in front of you all, and not always living. There's a truth. There is a truth here that I will never stand in front of a classroom and lie. I'm never going to become a corporate talking head, and the minute I do, I'm gone. And so I have to live that. There's a statement on my whiteboard that I get up in the morning when I get to work, and I look at it to start my day, and it was by William Baldwin. And it says, I cannot believe what you say because I see what you do. And if I fail that regularly. Now, don't think I live up to that, but I try to live
Absolutely.
up to that. And I think for me in particular, with the realities that we work, we're in public life. There's a lot of pressures. God knows what comes at people is incredibly strong. You've got the 4 public values. We're not going to get into that, but there's a lot that comes at people. Regardless, though, there are times where I know that there are people that could do better, and I can't control it. And so I have to, first of all, step back and say, what is my part? What can I do? And then what can I make sure that I'm still providing for those that are in service? And what can I be a part of that'll help create the best outcome of this? And that has helped me. What gets me up in the morning is those that I serve for, and that's you all. And ultimately, that's serving the citizens. So that has been my driver. But that's been the most difficult part. Because I'm not an activist anymore. I'm not somebody that is out there ruling or not, participating at a level where I can just call somebody. I'm a public service person, and we've gotten away from the word servant, which I don't have a problem with it, but I think there's some people that come at servant in a different way, so we're saying public service. But my mother told me right before she died, we were in Duke Hospital when I got the phone call from Mark about the job. And the minute I closed off the phone from Mark, she looked at me and she said, you got to make a decision. She said, you're going to have to shift from the role you've had in the community to now being in public service. And that's a big shift. And she said, I've been doing it now for my career. And she said, and it's worth every minute. My mom was the director of maternal and child health. She helped make healthy babies. I mean, she really was just reading something on her passing was Monday, 7 years ago. And for some reason, when I was looking up something on her, I found her obituary site, where people can type in. And Barry Goldstein, who was her director, Dr. Goldstein, had written something about how much my mother had changed the face of maternal and child health. And it was just really powerful, right? So
Yeah.
7 years later, that's still out there. But I knew that about my mom. But I remember when I was younger coming home and literally the drain out of that woman because of when she was coming from downtown Raleigh back to the house, what that was pulling out of her because of what she was facing every day to try to work with local counties and stuff like that on how to help people, in these different ways. And she said, you're going to have to make that choice. I have not regretted a day of making this choice. But I will say, there's been many a time on Facebook I've been wanting to click on something, or I've been wanting to say something.
Yeah.
Don't read the comments.
Yeah. Don't read the comments.
Lord have mercy, God. And I'm going to tell you, many a day, somebody better be glad I have a God. But it's not worth it.
That's right.
I'm not going to lose everything I've got over one comment. That's what I try to teach. But I got to live what I teach, right? And the other thing is I can see the outcome. I can see the difference. And it is worth it.
Yeah.
So, when
You've
you talk
made
about
it-
ownership,
Yeah. You've made a difference.
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank
I'm proud of you. I think your mom would be proud of you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, don't start me up now.
Oh, yeah. sorry.
Big old mama's boy.
Man, thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Man, this is an honor, so thank you.
Yeah.
And thank y'all for all you did for the Stanleys. That was really powerful.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you
We-
did. We
we
really
enjoyed
appreciate that for sure.
I'll never forget Michael in orientation. We made a connection over his tattoos,
Right.
and it was about our mothers, and that was something that I'll never forget as long as I live. So,
Yeah.
Amber, she's always in my heart, and the whole family, and that will always be something that I will contribute with and be a part of, and still giving blood.
They're a one of a kind family, and Michael was definitely a one of a kind guy. It was.
Yeah.
You
Legend.
struggle to find another one like him for
But
sure.
thank y'all for all you do, and just
Appreciate it.
stay safe. And everybody that listens to this, I hope they do the same, because there's a lot going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you think there's any hope that we can get some other county officials in here?
Why not? Just ask.
Just ask.
Just ask.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, on my radio show, that's exactly what I did. I just called. Avril,
Ask.
Avril came on my show. I mean, there are other people, So just reach out and say, this is what you do, and come on out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for being generous with your time. I know it's a lot. You're a busy man. I appreciate you
Yeah.
being generous.
I'm grateful. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate
Nice.
it.
Thanks.
Yep.